So I'm here in my room. I've got my computer turned on in front of me. I've got my microphone set up, and there's a notepad open with notes about my podcast. It's time to rewind. Looks like they're open to the second scene of Memento that starts in black and white at 2 minutes and 33 seconds, with a close-up on Leonard's face, and ends at 2 minutes and 56 seconds with "It's just an anonymous room." Who is this?
Bubba! It's me, Lisa Leaheey from Rabbit Hole Podcasts. I do that podcast with Jason Soto. We call it Between the Scares, and we look at everything Jason Blum and Blumhouse Productions have put out. You know me.
Oh, of course, though I do prefer to be called Bubbawheat. And who is this?
It's me, it's Jay Cluitt. I do that podcast with Mark Hoffmeyer of BBC the podcast and Connor the podcast on BBC and Connor, CNYC. You know me.
Oh.
We've podcasted loads of
Of
times.
course. Oh, yes, I apologize, but I have this condition. But thank you for joining us as our first guest here on this season of Memento. And, for those who are listening to the next episode, you might feel a little bit of a repetition because, we have been recording these all out of order. And this is one of our last recording sessions, even though this is the first guest. And even with Jay, this is not our first recording session with Jay talking about Memento.
My
But
head
this
hurts.
is the most perfect way to record this podcast.
As we have already
Right?
discussed.
We're doing it. Well, I wasn't there for that one, Jay, so I'm going to get my words in. No, but I mean, this whole idea of it is just perfect. I love it.
Yeah, I think any other movie I would, really push for recording them in order as much as possible. But this one, it's like, sure, yeah, let's record out of order. What the hey?
I mean, I figure it's going to be a great little Easter egg setup for the podcast itself to think about how many different times that you or I or Eric have talked about something and we're like, well, last week, but it's actually next week. And, how many different times that we make these weird little comments about time. So somebody needs to track those for us and get back to us.
Yeah, what I'll do is there'll be an Easter egg on Spotify for podcasters where I'll have a list. So I'll have a playlist on Spotify where you can listen to the episodes in the order that we recorded them.
It's perfect.
We recorded one episode of Con Air out of order, and Skype crashed so many times for me during that. It knew that it wasn't right. It just we've had so few recording issues, and that one my site went down like 5 times during it because it's just like, no, this isn't right. This isn't right. And it's just
Gotta keep Skype happy.
yeah.
All right, but Jay, since this is your first chronological episode, and also since this is the black and white scene and there's not nearly as much going on, I figured now would be a perfect time to ask you what your history with Memento is. When was the first time that you discovered Memento as a film?
So the first time I heard of it was probably around 2005, 2006, during my first year of university, when I one of my housemates there was a big film fan. I was just kind of getting into films, and he was like, "Oh, I just watched this film. It's terrible, awful film." And then he proceeded to ruin the ending for Memento for me. He shoots this guy. Turns out it wasn't the right guy. Doesn't look at it. And I was like, oh, okay, I won't watch that. And so Memento was one of my first instances of hearing a film was bad, going and watching said film later, and realizing people can be wrong about films, and opinions can just be incorrect. Because Memento is a great film. I am a big Christopher Nolan fan. I don't think he's made a bad film. He's made a couple of films that aren't great, but he's made mostly fantastic, phenomenal, incredible films. I love any kind of film that deals with time travel in any way, basically, and he's yet to make a film in chronological order. Every single film he's made has at least one scene that's out of place, and Memento is like the hold my beer of those kind of films. And you wanna? This is not all gonna be backwards, some of it's gonna be forwards. Haha. And it's going to be interspersed. Deal with it. So I really like Memento. Just it's one of those films that feels like it could just be a gimmick Like, oh, yeah, this bit's backwards, this bit's forwards, but it goes beyond the gimmick, and so it actually has a really good story behind it, like inside it. And I love when filmmakers have set themselves restrictions. This is quite a low budget film. It's making the film make sense backwards and forwards at the same time. I would love people to take some money away from Christopher Nolan so he can do these kind of smaller budget films again. Not that his big films aren't great. I'm looking forward to Oppenheimer immensely. But it's an incredible film. Like this works. This concept came together so successfully as it did. I think it's a miracle.
Yeah, there is so much going on with this film, and yeah, it is a lower budget film. It was shot on a relatively short schedule, and yeah, just the fact that he managed to come up with what he did is incredible, especially with the fact that so much of what we see on screen is so intentional, and there's so much additional thought placed behind even something that we'll talk about next week, something that you only see on screen for like a second. It's very intentional. But here, this starts out, and this is the first black and white scene, and I think it's funny because the voiceover, Leonard is describing this as an anonymous motel room, but we don't really get a good shot of the motel room until 20 seconds into a 23-second clip. We start off with this extreme close-up on Leonard's mouth, moving up to his eyes, and then we get this close-up of the typical like 90s and 2000s era low-budget key with the motel keychain attached to it, and then we get just shots of the rest of the room. We get the dresser with, I'm pretty sure those are two like generic bags of coffee.
They're those little paper envelopes you put over the glasses to protect them from dust and stuff, to show you the glasses are brand new.
I thought they were coffee as well, so I think Lisa is right.
No, I'm pretty darn, because I've seen that before. I'm pretty sure those are like little paper envelopes for glasses.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah,
I just
like drinking glasses. Yeah, whenever you said glasses, I thought first my mind went to reading glasses. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. But yeah, for drinking glasses, that makes sense. And then we get this shot of this like closet alcove with the very cheap wire hangers, and
so many of them too. There's like 15 of them. It's crazy.
Yeah,
like, how long are these people in these rooms?
and half of them are like the ones that are wire and plastic that they typically use. It's like they stole them from a Walmart.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's also this this very old looking like desktop fan. Yeah. And then I believe that there's like a piece of fabric which I'm guessing is like an extra blanket, like a generic blanket.
A blanket or a pillow or something, yeah. That fan looks like it would be very noisy, I think.
So, definitely.
Then we end this shot with the more like it's like a security or almost like a hidden camera angle of Leonard sitting on top of his bed in the motel room.
No, it's like this camera is like in the sprinkler. Like it's this weird kind of angle where and of course it's trained directly on the bed. So you absolutely get the idea that it's this seedy motel, that he's being watched, which absolutely fits in with the themes of the movie. Like people are keeping an eye on him in many different ways throughout this film and in this motel specifically.
My only other note I have for this chapter is Guy Pearce is so damn hot in this scene. Just in this film, he's like a hot, weird alien in Memento. They take the already very attractive Guy Pearce and they give him this bright blonde hair. He already has this such a huge toothy mouth. He has. That's hard to say. Which no offense to him at all. It's great. And then just all the tattoos. They make him look so odd, but he's still so damn hot.
And he's grimy in that 90s grunge way with that shirt. Yep, absolutely true. Not to
Yeah.
mention, why are there so many lamps in this room? Do you notice, like, there's the bedside lamp, the standard one, and then there's the above the bed with, like, the lamp light bulb pointing up and the lamp light bulb pointing down. So you figure, okay,
like
reading
the
lamp.
wall sconce.
Yeah, yeah. And then you look to the other bedside table, and it's like a double-headed desk lamp. Like, what the hell's it doing there? There's no real. I guess it's another reading lamp. It just seems so strange.
The bed's big enough for two, barely. So you could have one person on the side
Yeah.
with a lamp, but then you'd expect the lamps to match. So maybe that's just this is a really terrible motel because the lamps don't even match.
Again, how many people are coming to this motel to read?
Yeah, the bed
I
does
wonder.
Like, if I had to guess, I would say that the bed is a full-size bed and not a queen-size
Yeah,
bed.
that's definitely not a queen.
And you say to read, but I feel like a bedside lamp would add a bit more romantic ambience, shall we say, for what might be going on.
Yeah,
in the
well, there
motel
certainly
room.
is. I can't see where you would put the quarter for the magic fingers on this bed. I mean, maybe it's behind the phone out of frame. I'm not sure.
And it also looks, I believe there's an ashtray on both sides of the bed, too. There's like a glass ashtray on the one side, and
one on the table as well.
The other ashtray looks like it's more metal, but it doesn't quite look like the clear glass, or unless it's just in the shadow, so it just looks less transparent. And then we have like the very generic round table, which it almost reminds, like, it's not, but it reminds me of like those wooden spools that are common in like college dorm rooms.
Oh yeah. Those you grab out of some
construction site.
Yeah, construction site where they've got like spools of wire and you just roll that sucker back to your dorm. Absolutely.
And then we see, I think it looks kind of like a nondescript. It's either his jacket or a duffel bag on the chair next to the bed.
Could be his trousers. He's not wearing any as well. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, it's hard to tell what it is since this is all in black and white, and yeah, it is worth mentioning that he's sitting on top of the bed, which is completely made. It doesn't look like he has slept in the bed either. Whether this is, like, we don't know what time of day this is, if it's like maybe in the middle of the day, so it had already been taken care of by the housekeeping, and he hasn't settled in for the night, or what, and he's wearing just a flannel shirt and no pants.
It fits right in with like this confusion of where are you? Where am I? What's going on? What, some anonymous motel room where, like, it looks the same as every other motel room. And, this is a theme that comes up in the short story that Jonathan Nolan wrote. And it's this idea that you only get a suggestion of time passing because of the way he describes the various rooms, because he talks about it as, oh, it's just some room. But for a reader looking through it, you're picking up on, oh, this is a room that has, for example, it doesn't have a sliding glass door, or it's got mirrors on the ceiling, which is really fun when I have to explain why there are mirrors on the ceiling for certain students. It's like, I'm going to ruin you, and I'm so sorry. But, like you explain that, and that's Nolan's, discreet way of telling you time is passing, and that the character, whose name is Earl in the short story, that Earl is traveling, right? With Leonard, this is our first introduction of it. And this suggestion of where is he, has he moved, it takes more time for us to really start understanding that for him.
And it does give him, a very different look than we saw in the opening scene with the suit, the cream suit with the blue shirt.
Right.
And this is, it feels like a very different time and place, even though in reality it's only just a few days apart.
Right. And I mean, that's really what sets us up, and that's what lures us into Leonard as our narrator. We have no choice but to stick with him and his perception. And so when you have these two scenes juxtaposed together, we see him looking very different in a very different location. So our brain goes, oh, two completely different time periods. And it's still too early for us to start considering what that difference actually is.
Mm-hmm. And then that is, pretty much it for for this scene. Do either of you have anything else for this this introductory black and white scene?
There's an odd score going on with like some odd noises. Like there's like a CD skip kind of noise and some like muted beats in the background. It's kind of bizarre. Just the sounds going on, which I think adds to the state of confusion as well. Just
yeah, and it also like creates a feeling of tension. I think is what it's supposed to do.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And I said before how this film's a miracle that it exists. It's a miracle it exists, and it's not just a massive bummer. Like it's not like horrendously depressing. Just because the Leonard situation is awful, and the fact that they've managed to have some fun and make some like tension and thrilling story out of it, and so you're not just thinking like, oh my god, this must be awful every second of the film is impressive.
Yeah, it's tense, but there is so many moments of humor spread throughout this film. Like I love, I guess it's Christopher Nolan's sense of humor, but every joke and little comic relief bit I really enjoy in this movie.
Yeah,
completely agree.
But that's that wraps up this this second episode of Memento, and this second episode of this season of Memento. And thank you again, Jay, for joining us for these first couple weeks as our first guest. And for anybody listening that may not be familiar with you and your work, why don't you go ahead and take a moment to let them know where else they can find you online?
Sure. Well, I do a similar but different podcast called Deep Blue Sea, the podcast, and also Con Air, the podcast, where we take a film and break it into chunks, but we do chapters, we do scenes rather than time loops or whatever this is. So we did Con Air. We're doing Con Air at the moment. We've almost finished Con Air by the time this comes out, I think. And Deep Blue Sea, we've done the whole trilogy. That's in the past. We're now looking at Deep Blue Sea adjacent films, which are films that are in some way like Deep Blue Sea, but often aren't. But we just want to talk about. So yeah, Deep Blue Sea, the podcast, Con Air, the podcast, everywhere you can find podcasts. And if there is somewhere you find podcasts that you can't find our podcast, please let us know, and we'll put our podcast there. Thank you.
So let me ask you. So are you going to start doing Con Air adjacent?
Says that like it's an absurd question.
He says it like it's a question he's been asked before. No, we've done a few kind of bonus episodes. Our schedule got a little bit haywire with Con Air and with me and Mark being all over the place a little bit. So we've done a few bonus episodes where we did like a Passenger 57, which is very similar to Con Air, it turns out. But once we finish doing Con Air, we're going to stop. That's going to be one and done, and back to Deep Blue Sea, because that's what we've realised talking about Con Air is we miss talking about Deep Blue Sea. So we're gonna, which it's nice to learn these things. So we're gonna go back to talking about more sea monsters and Rennie Harlan films and boating disasters.
Every time I find them, I send them to you too. I'm like, look at this garbage. Check this one out.
Everyone you send, I put on a spreadsheet with your name next to it, Lisa.
Yes.
Because you joined us to talk about Santa Jaws. You introduced me to Santa Jaws. And
it is Santa Jaws.
Now one of my favourite Christmas films. So.
My contribution.
Yeah.
And thank you, Lisa, for joining me as my black and white scene co-host for this entire season.
This is super exciting. I love this movie so much. So looking forward to all of the episodes that we've already recorded.
Me too.
And as always, I am Bubbawheat, and you can find me on Twitter where I'm at Bubbawheat. You can find this show, It's Time to Rewind, on just about any podcatcher available out there. Feel free to like and subscribe and leave a rating or a review if you are able to, depending on where you are listening. We also have a Facebook group, It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group. You can join that to discuss episodes as they come out, as well as have discussions about other time loop movies and TV episodes. It's all welcome there. And until next time, I assume I've already told you about Memento?
Oh, only every time I see you.
It's just an anonymous room.